right. All right. The Lord be with you. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a partner in our mission and ministry. You can sure keep eating. We just want to get started and rolling here. Our table prayer, "Come Lord Jesus," might sound like a real simple one, but I always think of what a fitting one too. And today, as we're reminded in that gospel, Jesus keeps showing up, right? Comes to be with us in our meal, comes to be with us in our neighbor, all these different things. And we're sent out in the world to have our eyes open to see that Jesus keeps showing up. And so let's go ahead and have a prayer together, and then we'll continue on with our order of our annual meeting. Lord, we give thanks, and indeed, you keep showing up. Whether or not we pray, "Come, Lord Jesus," you are there, and you come that we may be set free and that your people can may have life. So thanks for inviting us into this mission and ministry. Lord, guide us with your Spirit today and always. Lord, thanks for the people here and beyond these walls and all those that you work through, that we get to share in this mission and ministry together. And so, Lord, indeed, your light shines. And so thanks for the great ways that you are at work. Thank you for that privilege that we get to be a part of your mission. Lord, just bless us not only in this time together, but bless us as we continually are sent out to join in your work in this world. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
You picking me up? Oh yeah, there we go. Okay. All right, so just want to call us to order for today. So I'll call us to order at 11:57. Today we'll follow Robert's Rules of Order and just follow that process throughout the meeting here. Our quorum will pass around ballots here and make sure that we've got enough for our vote to be official. And then for those that need it, we also have some materials in the center here. If you want to see annual budget recommendation for 2024, as well as all the annual reports, we have some booklets there for you up front. And I think here today, we'll move next. And with our agenda, we have the 2023 pastoral reports, the 2023 fiscal financial results, the ministry team reports, so we'll call those out when we get there, and then the FLC Constitution. Every 3 years there's some changes that need to be ratified and voted on, and we have the first step in that process today. The 2024 elections for new members, council members, as well as some of the other committees. The 2024 budget, our Light of Christ Awards, and then closing prayer and adjournment. Do I have a motion to approve today's agenda? Motion? And Ron, sorry, who called out first? What's that? Nick Lean? Okay, and then Ron for second. Okay, so with that, I think I'll pass it off to Kevin for the pastoral reports.
All right, as we go through this, and Pastor Kristen and Pastor Ben, we're going to kind of be a team approach on this pastoral report. First, I want to take some time to say thanks, and I want to start right off the bat. You've got a great group of council members, and I think of that, not only are they in charge of our strategic oversight, right, and to think strategically, obviously, with that, but also are folks saying, and how do you want me to dig in? Whether it's on a sub-team and what have you, they are great servant leaders. And we got 4 of those who are concluding their terms. Julie Amdahl, who stood up just right on cue. That was so perfect, Julie, just like we did in warm-ups. And Julie is one that is such a great passion, not only involved with our women's ministry, She's there behind the scenes when it comes to, hey, we're getting ready for a memorial service and getting things ready for that. We got something going on with the youth, and she's the biggest supporter that you could ever find. All those different ways, as well as our council member, Liz Grossman, I think it is Liz. Liz makes a 144-mile round trip to be here. They moved in this past year. Liz not only has been a part of our council, Liz went with our senior high students out to Outlaw Ranch. All these different ways here, caring for our youth, you name it, incredible folks. I say Brandon Meyer, our president, who just kicked things off for us. I think when we started the year and different things, you got invited into a lot of challenges, and today we get to celebrate a lot of things. And so all those things that a president does behind the scenes of setting those agendas, addressing different things, you've had a heck of a good president in Brandon Meyer. And we've got Dennis Watson, our treasurer. I think of last year, he had to stand up with a dubious honor to say, hey, we're anticipating a $63,000 deficit this year. And with that also said, and how do we make that different? And so thankful for Dennis, not only for those strategy, but as our treasurer, these last years, behind the scenes, working together, putting that budget, being in here all the time, answering questions on things, coming in to sign checks for something we need, you name it, the list goes on. And so we'll do later our Light of Christ Award winners. All of these folks could be those as well. Their maybe role as a council member is a little bit more up front, but there's so many things to be thankful for. I want to give thanks for you as a congregation, those ways that you jump into this mission. Yesterday morning early, there's folks making tater tot hot dish for today. All those things that happen, you are willing to use your gifts, right? I've always told by a mentor, when does the church move and stuff happens? When you got people with fire in their belly. And so thanks for being those people. You are an incredible bunch. With that, so thankful for our staff, all of our volunteers. You are a group of people that you take this mission seriously, and you're there wholeheartedly, and you are a gift to work with and serve with. And so indeed, Jesus shows up in all of you. Today we're going to do a little look back on this past year and looking ahead as well. As we started the year, we talked about this real faith initiative and saying we want, no matter what age a person is, to have this faith that's rooted, right, in Scripture and tradition. It's with the world, it's authentic, and it's lifelong. And we talked about we want folks to have that experience of something you asked for in some of our listening surveys was, can we have some small groups? And so with that, to develop small groups for moms, dads, and a grief group. With that also, we said, hey, we want to deepen our connections and strengthen to the community. And we also want to strengthen our youth and family ministry. And so there has been a youth team, and under Pastor Ben's leadership, working to do things to better equip our youth. They'll get into that more, but revising our pre-confirmation program, our confirmation program, you name it. So that was our initiatives. One part as we started off with that, we knew that one of our hopes of carrying those things out was based on, hey, can we raise the FTE? Can we raise that full-time equivalency for Pastor Ben and Pastor Kristen, right? Life happens, right? And you know what? That's not going to be really realistic this time. So you pivot. As I said, Pastor Dennis, maybe that could be a new title for you, Dennis. Dennis, shared, hey, here's what our situation is. Saying, what can we do to make this different? One of those pieces is a culture of generosity. As we started this last year, Pastor Kristen kind of spearheaded our efforts, saying, we're going to do more to talk and point out God's abundance and point out all the ways that you live generously and to encourage that. Sometimes around money we can live with kind of this high anxiety. So how do we intentionally sort of kind of grow as a culture of generosity? So that's been some things happening through the year. We began that Close the Gap appeal early on in the year. The pastoral FTE remained at 2.0 total. As I share that just for clarification, besides some interim times where for youth and family things that Ben and Kristen's combined FTE has been raised, and you always see the two of them around, but they share a 1.0 full-time role generally. Right now, as we don't have a youth director, that's been bumped up for the interim time of 1.5, but that's the interim time as opposed to the regular. Does that make sense as I'm saying that? Some folks say, oh, you got 3 pastors? Yeah, we do, and yeah, we don't at the same time. And when we got to May last year, our youth director, Nick Madsen, resigned. And so we shifted some things a little bit. We still did our impact trip to the Black Hills. Other things happened. And Pastor Ben will share in more about how him and the youth team, what they've seen and what they're carrying out. With that, I'm going to invite Ben and Kristen to come on up here, and they're going to share with us about some of those things that have happened here this past year. Come on up.
This is one way to encourage closeness.
I'm going to unbutton my shirt to get you more slack. But
This is not what I was imagining this afternoon, but here we are.
we're one pastor, but kind of not. Right? Well, Brandon has a hand up for
Thank you.
It's much less awkward. Brandon. Yeah.
More closeness than we needed, than we all needed, probably. Okay, so our one of our themes this past year, especially around our stewardship efforts, was just what I needed. And we came up with that because it's a phrase that we kept hearing about. Hearing from you all, from lots of our members, from community members, moments when they experienced something here at Farmington Lutheran in the building or something that we were hosting out in the community, and they said this was just what I needed. So we wanted to lift that up as something to celebrate and as something to push, that we wanted to live into more. How do we continue to provide for our needs, for the community's needs, for the world's needs? A few places that we saw that, heard that, certainly around funerals and difficult moments in people's lives where what they needed was a word of hope or a community to come around them and encourage them. And we're able to do that. That's such a gift that we get to give, to be what people need. I hear it a lot in our moms group, one of the small groups that we've started and gotten up and running. Moms saying, this is what I needed. I'm not sure if that's referring to the community that we're creating or like 45 minutes away from their children, or both, but it's a gift. But we also hear it around moments of celebration. And I don't think that we lift that up often enough. That having a faith community is a gift in difficult moments, but also having a place to come where people will celebrate with you, or who will see with you that it's not just chance or happenstance or luck, but that God is involved in the good things in your lives. That's a gift too. So we have folks who come in and they want to share about their new baby or grandbaby, or they got really great news in a diagnosis instead of some of the worst case fears that they had. And they get to come and share that in a small group or with staff, a Bible study, or in worship, in this kind of space where we're having fellowship, and have people celebrate with them and share that joy, which magnifies the joy. So part of what we want to say today is thank you for helping to meet so many of those needs. Thank you for helping be the reason people get to say, this is just what I needed. Do you want to hop in on some youth points?
Kevin mentioned a couple of points about youth already. So a big thanks to the youth team that gathered last summer upon the departure of Nick Madsen. We assembled a youth team, so people who have had youth or currently have youth in the program or who will have youth up and coming in the program. And the idea behind that was to take a pretty solid overview, a pretty high altitude look at what the state of youth ministry is, both kind of in this community, but also in a wider way. We read a book and watched some stuff and looked at some things by some teachers out of Luther Seminary, and they've been a big help in kind of bouncing ideas off of and asking good questions and all of those things. So that group exists now. The work of that was largely as the fall hit to get things up and running. They have been wonderful substitutes for confirmation small guides. They've been resources in lots of ways, and so I'm grateful to all of them. Most of them are named throughout my reports, my 2 reports, the pastor's report and the youth report. And so what the focus has been for me at the moment, and one thing that we've learned, whether it's correct or not, probably not, is that when we talk about youth ministry, what we often mean most is confirmation. And so we're trying to work up to a point where we can build out of that. But that has been, for the Lutheran Church, basically for a long time, not just ours, but all over the place, that confirmation is kind of youth ministry. And then when we finish that programming year, then we kind of don't know what to do, or we're kind of done. And so that helps reinforce the incorrect, the false graduation narrative, right? That they get through confirmation, and they graduate, and then we may or may not see you again as a youth in the church. So part of the work that we're doing is fortifying that foundation and then getting to a point where hopefully we can build into senior high. The big project that I think has lifted off now and is paying dividends and can be seen is the pre-con situation. That is all sixth graders. So we looked around, when we got here, we looked around at the kind of the state of confirmation and thought, there's a pretty stark shift between Sunday school, FLC time programming, and confirmation. Suddenly we're jumping into reading the Bible and theology and catechism in a way that's a pretty big shift. And so what we did is we reeled back all the sixth graders into their own thing called pre-con. They meet after school, and they also have a family supper that happens monthly. And we decided we would roll through the milestones that happen at Wednesday school and FLC time and kind of build them all again, rehash them or revisit them. And so when they get to confirmation, they've got some skills in navigating their Bible. They've got some small group discussion ability already built in. They've got the freedom and encouragement to ask questions and explore their faith. They don't have to have it all figured out. And I think that that's been a big thing. I can tell this year that there's a difference between seventh graders from previous years and seventh graders this year who are already comfortable in this situation, in that room, in a faith formation possibility. Jen Watts kind of was walking along the office while we were constructing this thing for the first time. She had a sixth grader, now as a seventh grader, and is watching all of this firsthand work. So we're looking forward to that continuing. I really like what that's doing. And then confirmation is 7th and 8th grade, and that pattern has been, continue to be a 3-year cycle where we do the prayer, Lord's Prayer, the Creed, and the 10 Commandments. How do we do faith? What does God want? And what do we believe? And that will be a 3-year cycle. We are aging confirmation up into 9th grade next year. So we held confirmation back kind of into pre-con, and we're moving adding one more year in the 9th grade year. So it will be a 3-year cycle after that 6th grade pre-con. And the idea behind that is twofold. One, there's no reason to graduate kids in 8th grade, but also that might help get into kind of the nebulous senior high ministry thing. And so that cuts a year out of senior high, the 4 years there, and that helps us to kind of bridge further, kind of like pre-con does from into middle school, do that into high school as well. With that said, senior high ministry is lacking right now. We've had lots of conversations and ideas. Kevin will talk, and we'll talk a little bit about the opportunities that we have and see, and the things we just can't get to yet. But senior high has been done and sustained in some ways. Chris Patchy has been quietly meeting with students with the chill and chat kind of model that Nick Madsen started when he was here. Betsy Graw did some care packages that we had the idea for, and she assembled and sent all on her own for students that are in their first year or later of college or community school or something like that. So it's been happening by the way of volunteer, but not by intentional programming in a way that I want it to yet. So that's kind of the state of where youth things are. The mission or the goal of the youth team as we meet going forward, we'll be shifting more from a getting program going and running to a crafting job descriptions and ideas and dreaming about what a youth position will look like going forward. Given the way things are now, what do we need? Who do we want? Is it going to look like a youth director exactly again? Probably not quite, but we'll think about that together as a youth team. The big adult faith formation piece that we're facilitating, that I'm facilitating, is Brood Theology. That's on the list. That happens monthly at the Long Branch. I have found, and that's why this whole curriculum exists, that when you put church people in a bar or a restaurant, we tend to talk about things very well in ways that we don't always talk about them in other places. And I don't think it's just the catalytic ability of the drinks on hand. I think it's when you put things out in the real world topics are more accessible sometimes than they are in our homes or in churches. And so we've talked about things from Jesus being a Democrat or Republican. We talked about Israel and Palestine last week. We talk about dying a lot, which sounds kind of like a downer, but we all want to talk about it, turns out. So that's a great place, and we've been doing that with the Owls group during Wednesdays as well in the afternoons. It's been a good touch point for a lot of deep topics that we need to talk about, too. I'm done. I'm out.
The last thing I'd add to those celebrations then, that you can see it listed there, is the Close the Gap fund. So we started the year with this, I won't steal Dennis's thunder, but $63,000 projected deficit, and we didn't end there. And part of that was the work of this Close the Gap campaign. And that campaign raised $50,000, which you should give yourselves a big round of applause. It's incredible. And part of our thinking when we went into that was we're spending this year giving thanks for a God who is generous, learning together how we live out that generosity. God gives it to us. How do we pass it on? So one of the things we decided was that for every $10,000 we made, we would give $1,000 away. That variety of thinking behind that, our scriptures tell us to give our money away, so we're following what our scriptures say. One of the numbers that the Bible throws out is 10% or a tithe. God commands that we give a tithe of what we have. So that's why 1,000 out of every 10,000. And we get to model for the community what we believe. We believe we have a God who provides for us not just the bare minimum, but in abundance. And so we get to turn around and act that out by sharing abundance with the community. So we got to give $1,000 to the Farmington Food Shelf, to the 5 elementary schools in Farmington. They each got $200 for their feeding programs. Each elementary school has a little different approach to helping students and their families who have some kind of food insecurity. And we gave $1,000 to the Lewis House, which provides a shelter and resources for families who face domestic violence, and $1,000 to the Toys for Town program, which is just phenomenal. And the feedback that we got back each time we sent out a gift was such a profound gratitude, and the impact that that has on those organizations and the thousands of people that they reach is impossible to measure, but wonderful. So you should give yourselves another round of applause because it's so great. All right, I have a note that we're supposed to go to the next slide now. Okay, do you want to start on this?
Sure. Just looking at that we're always a work in progress. And here's kind of an analogy, I guess. I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you have a fitted bed sheet that's not big enough to cover the mattress. And I celebrate a ministry that happens and it goes. Life kind of happens like this sometimes. And I don't think that's a terrible thing, but I think of when I first was able to join you back in 2012, and they said, hey, we're going to call an associate right away, and we get to later in the year, and folks saying, we don't have the money to do that. It's like, hey, we got a new pastor here, but the other end of the bed cover, the mattress cover pulls away. And then, hey, we're going to call an associate a couple years after we had an intern and that's great. And then we go, oh, wait, we don't have a youth director again. We should get one of those. And you go to pull that end of the mattress or that end of the cover, and it opens up. You get the idea, right? And all these things. And so as we live with that, there's times too in our time on those parts of going, hey, here's what we want to do with adult faith formation. And go to do that and go, oh, but right now we need you to really put your time into youth and family. And so the youth and family corner maybe gets covered, but the adult faith formation part doesn't show. I did this a lot better in my head earlier, I apologize. But does that make sense anyhow? So we live with that going, hey, we want to put this time into stewardship and all the year-round effort, and so we're trying to form teams and build those systems because we have that challenge of how do you get to everything? And how do you do that in a way that's sustainable, where folks aren't just running crazy all the time? So when there's times we say, hey, why is there an invitation for an increase in giving? That's the parts of going, how do we carry out this ministry and how do we cover it? Because I think it's a ministry that really makes a heck of a difference. And so thanks for your incredible generosity in the midst of that. And I want you to hear that when I name that reality, I want you to hear just as loud, and thanks for all the ways that you give. Like this year we were anticipating a real challenge, and it turned out a lot better than what we would have anticipated on that. And so thank you. I don't know if you want to share some more on different kind of hopes that we have or those things at this point? Yeah. Sounds good. But, and another part of thinking, something I really want to share, and we'll kind of do this part together, is the culture here. And part of that, talking about those just what I needed moments, how awesome that is when someone says, wow, being in that mom's group today, man, that was just what I needed. Or folks from the community who are here for a funeral, and they hear a word of hope. I don't know how many times I've sat next to somebody, and they remember Madden McKean's funeral here. And maybe they were sitting way back, watching it on a screen there, but saying, wow, that was just what my kid and I needed to hear. Those kind of moments, we're going, that's what we do, what we do. How awesome is that? Also, just being a voice, and steal your thunder here, but a place of grace. And there's different parts of the family tree in Christianity, and that's wonderful, right? And when we get to heaven someday, we'll figure out, well, what are all the parts I had wrong, or we had wrong, you had wrong? But I think that one thing is we try to be a people who err on the side of grace. And I think that's such an important thing. And not that we have the market cornered on that, but I think we do live in a pocket of the world where, at least I hear this from my kid coming home from like community youth groups, that a very conservative fundamentalist theology is more the norm. And so that voice where people, err on the side of being welcomed, err on the side of grace, I think there's always a place for that. And so thank you for the ways that you live that out. This year that shows up too, as I mentioned, desire to connect. When we had meals, you think back to 2020 and all that we couldn't do, and seeing we have meals, you guys went nuts. It's like, hey, we're coming together, we're having meals, this is great. And I think at the heart of that, it's a desire to connect. One of our core values gets lived out, and we see that with our 6th grade groups and all that, and we're going to do it again for Lent this year. But the way you live that out, as I share here, a community-minded people wanting to serve. Hey, what does the school need? An openness. We've got Head Start preschool who meets down the hall, throughout the week. All those things, and a curiosity. I think when it comes to Brood theology, that curiosity for Scripture and life, and how does faith and all these things fit together. That's an awesome thing. I'm rambling on as I share this, but all those culture things are huge. It's huge, huge, huge. When I hear, they say, listen to the youth and listen to new people. And when I hear them come and share those things, I get to hear that at times. I don't know that you get to hear it. And so thanks for being church. That's kind of a culture we want to be protective of. And so thank you for being a place of grace. As I share that, I want to, I was going to mention it as well, in one of these things that we celebrate, and not that it's all about finances, but I think of that as we're trying to stretch and grow. And look back in the summer of 2012, our general fund, saying how much do we have in our checking account for stuff, was just under $18,000, which is about 7 to 10 days worth of expenses. To look at that, I think at the end of the year, we've got that general fund balance is at $264,000, right? And that's whenever we would, Bob Brown and others, we were hoping and dreaming, hey, can we get to where we've got 2 to 3 months there, so if something happens that the church's mission can continue on, even if you have some adversity like a storm comes through or things like that. And so that's one of those kind of quiet things behind there, but thank you for the ways that you make this mission happen and have it going forward as well. I'm going to share a little bit of this different culture trends and that's supposed to say, and bucking some trends. Something that Pastor Kristen and Pastor Ben and I at times hear, especially the last few years from other churches, and saying, yep, our budget just shrunk by $40,000. Oh, and now in this year it shrunk by $60,000. And those things. And parts where they're planning is saying, how are we going to keep reducing our ministry? We've been in the spot that up until this year, the last 5 years, we said it's been pretty flat. And it's tough to get excited about, hey, our giving stayed pretty flat. But when you hear those and hear those different trends, flat looks a lot better than the alternatives. To this year, and Dennis will share that we had a really strong December. Your generosity, you heard that with Closing the Gap, that we really had one of our best years is how we finished up that we've had in a long time. But say thank you for all the ways that you do that. I think of those things as well. There's, as you notice in anything, there's less people who gather in person. Just here nationally in a conversation, folks saying, hey, our worship attendance, and there's some outliers where things have gotten stronger, but pretty common to hear, yeah, we're at about 65% of where we used to be. The awesome thing is, people also connect digitally. People always, also support, even if they're not here in person as much. which is an awesome kind of hidden story as well, but it's a different world, and we don't know what this is fully going to look like, but I want to say thanks for those ways that you indeed are going against some of those different trends. That's an awesome thing. So, on to the next one. If you want to share is where we're heading here this year, are the new initiatives?
Yeah. So these were some things we lifted up with our stewardship drive this last fall. These are our goals for this year, because apparently we're in 2024 now. We are focusing on knowing our story, knowing our purpose, and knowing we belong. And as staff, we came up, and council and volunteers, we asked for a lot of input. What are some ways that we hope to live into these themes? So for knowing our story, we hope to offer more Bible studies. There's some excellent ones happening already. More opportunities for us to get into our story, which is the Bible. We want to know our Bible a little better, and then also know how it connects to our lives. So not just that you have some sense for what the stories are in that big, thick book, but also why do they matter, or how do they live out in our lives now. We also talked about adding a morning version of Brute Theology. Since Ben is such a morning person, he was really excited about that idea. But sometimes that evening time frame is challenging. So being able to have those conversations at another time of day might allow for more folks to participate. We're developing our podcast. Jen Watts and Chris Lynch and some others have been working on that, so that there are other ways to engage with our story that aren't just in person, but ways that you can participate out in the world and when you're out and about. Knowing our purpose, this is really leaning into what do we do with our faith? Why does it matter? Why should the rest of the world care that we believe in Jesus? So we hope to continue to strengthen our volunteer engagement and have some growth in our caregiving programs so that more folks more regularly are getting checked in on, and continue to work on our feeding ministry. It's such a phenomenal thing to see how Food on the 4th and the confirmation programs going out to the variety of food shelves in the community. There are all kinds of ways that you all are already helping to feed people. And so we want to continue to strengthen that, to find other ways that we can get more food into people's lives. Kevin likes to say that our focus as Farmington Lutheran is for all people to know God's amazing love. And we want that to be more than a catchphrase. We really want people to actually feel how much God loves them. And there are some tangible ways that we can do that. We think that is our purpose. And then know we belong. Kevin was saying we're celebrating our culture, that we're a place of grace. It's been such an honor to hear from new folks, new members who will come and say they were hurt somewhere else, had some experience with an institution of faith that was painful. And then they're brave enough to try again, and they find something different here. That is a privilege that we hold close to our hearts, that we get to create a community where people feel like they belong, not just when they have their act together, but all the time. And if anyone has questions about that, they can just look at the front pew on any given Sunday morning and see you don't have to have your act together to be here at Farmington Lutheran. So we are working on developing an online picture directory so that you have the chance to say, who's that person? I had another great conversation with them this morning, that you can pull up a face and put a face with a name. And we're hoping to continue to develop our First Wednesday meals and have some more small group ministries happening. One just real small example of hitting both that purpose and that sense of belonging is this display back here in the corner. So we've got a Farmington Lutheran member, their family, who suffered a house fire this last fall. And one of the things that Corey Meyer lost was all of her supplies to run an after-school program at Riverview. She runs a Playing with Food camp in the month of February, but all of her stuff burned. So she knew she belongs here, and she could ask for help, and we know it's our purpose to help. So it's one opportunity that we get to live into that a little bit. If you're interested in knowing more, you can check out that display back there. So those are just some of our goals, and they're great goals, and they're only going to happen with your help. We have wonderful staff here, and that wonderful staff is limited, of course, on our time and capacity. So if you have an idea or a passion that either lines up with something that you've heard this morning or doesn't, please don't be shy about saying, hey, I'd really like to get involved with fill in the blank, or you haven't said this yet, but I'm really good at this thing, and I'd like to offer that up, or how I have 1 hour a week, how can I give that, or whatever it is. This mission that we share is something we actually share as the body of Christ. We do all of this together. So please keep thinking about how you want to be involved, how you want to be a part of living into some of these initiatives this year. And thank you for all the ways that you are already making all of that happen. Next.
Go to the next slide here. We kind of share on this one together here, Kristen, but kind of it's our wrap-up slide, but as Kristen shared, hey, a lot of times we don't give God enough praise. And so how do we point out, hey, here's great ways that God is at work. So keep telling our story. I think the mission that you carry out, we have together is so important for this world. As we always want to do, sometimes it happens through surveys, but in conversations, to keep listening, because the Spirit works in you. Like, what are priorities? Where should we be putting time and energy to keep growing as a culture of abundance and generosity? Your giving happens in awesome and wonderful ways, and I think many of you know this and do this so already, is highlighting some of those different alternatives. There's appreciated stocks can be donated. There's IRA distributions. Legacy giving. We put on a couple seminars. We haven't had anybody actually sign up or show up for it, but we've had 2 households in the past few months who said, hey, we want to let Farmington Lutheran know that we are remembering you in our estate planning. So some of those different things that are happening, just trying to be creative and to grow in that. Also asking that question, hey, how are we called to live out our mission? What's the best way for that to happen now? To have those moments of stepping back. Hey, how should this be staffed? How do we do a better job of involving volunteers and building systems that engage and serve more people? And so this is where you go. It's a privilege to be your pastors and to be in this mission and ministry together. Pastor Kristen and Pastor Ben are really gifts that, what an awesome thing is, things that I thought a few years ago. I had a bishop and another book say, wow, Kevin, you got some gifts for this? Now I go to meetings and I listen to Kristen and I listen to Ben going, hey, that used to be my line or my role. They go like, oh, these guys are really, really good and beyond me in so many different ways. So it's really a privilege to serve together. And so thank you all. And if you guys have anything else you wanted to share, otherwise, let's go ahead and introduce.
Well, it's always a good opportunity to offer some praise for Kevin, too, to make him uncomfortable. We had such a gift. We just love being here. We have such great coworkers and colleagues, and I don't know that Ben or I have ever met a lead pastor who is less threatened or more uplifting. So thank you. Thank you all for being the body of Christ together and for taking some time. And you should feel free to hop up and get more refreshments while we continue.
All right. I think Brandon's going to catch us up on an agenda item, and then we'll have Dennis with our finance report.
So I think I'm going to ask for a little bit of grace. This is a place of grace. So I forgot earlier about our vote. So we had our first and our second, and I didn't actually call for a vote. So approving today's agenda, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. And then secondly, want to also do the same. Can I get a motion for the 2023 annual meeting minutes? Okay, so Matt Dimich and then Nick Lean again. Thank you. All in favor? Aye, great. Any opposed? Okay, so I have a couple other quick housekeeping things as well. You do have receptacles to put away your trash from eating, but I also want to call attention, I think there's plenty. There's even some to-go options if you'd like that, so please help yourself to more. And with that, I'll go ahead and hand it off to Dennis.
Alrighty. Hey, I am on. I think I need to do that. All right, let's start out. Wow, huh? Not exactly what 2023 was looking like a year ago when we were sitting here having this meeting. A year ago, we were talking about what it looked like being fully staffed for the first time in 5 years. And we were talking about how offerings were pretty much flat over that 5-year period. Well, none of that happened. Full staffing lasted until the middle of February, about 2 weeks. And offerings had a large increase to them. So everybody out there, if you heard, I won't take credit for sending the message, but the message got out and people responded, and that is very positive and very exciting. So we'll start out. I'll direct you to page 25 is the treasurer's and the audit committee reports. And then we'll start out talking about the 2023 financials. Start on page 26. And then there's an additional handout for a couple pages that is the income statement. And when we're talking about that, it's the first 2 columns of numbers, which is, well, I just lost it there. The 2023 actual, and then what the 2023 budget was. So again, as the slide shows, bottom line, we had a positive $29,450. And that's a very good ways away from a $63,000 negative, which is what the budget was showing. So how did we get there? Total receipts were $953,480 some. This is a little over $78,000 more than what we had budgeted, and it's $92,000 more than what was actually received in 2022. If we look at offerings, as part of the total receipts. So let's talk about offerings, and let's not talk about close the gap right now. So just what came through as offerings at $842,997. This is just shy of $16,000 more than what we had on the budget. $2022 is. And I'm cutting in and out, I can hear that. Sorry. And then let's close the gap appeal as an additional $50,379 in receipts in 2023. Maybe we should just let that sink in for a second or two. Very positive. Then we get to the general fund expenses. At the total of $924,031, that was $14,260 some less than what we had budgeted, and it was $36,066 more than what 2022 was. So receipts came in well above where we were budgeting, and expenses came in a little less than what we had budgeted, which makes it a very positive year on the bottom line. So for 2023, one of the biggest things is payroll and benefits. Payroll and benefits at $561,000 some. That's 60.8% of the total expenses for the year. That was $34,000 less than what we had budgeted, and it was $1,765 less than what it was in 2022. Included in that payroll and benefits number is $10,000 in honorariums. And that comes from a donation we received at the end of the year. And part of that request was to give each staff member a bonus on their pay. And so that's what that $10,000 is in honorariums. And when we get to the balance sheet, I'll mention it, but on the balance sheet there is a liability sitting out there for that because we needed to get the timing of the receipt of that donation and the pay and the expense of that in the same year, or it will make 2024 look kind of bad. So kind of the method behind that. Also in payroll and benefits for the year, as we mentioned, Pastor Ben, we moved up another 0.5 full-time equivalent in the fall as he was taking the confirmation program without a youth director involved in that. So we added a little into his compensation and his time in order to do that. So that's that's an overall view of the payroll and benefits, which is a large part of the expenses for the year. I also want to point out building repairs and maintenance. Building and repairs and maintenance at $95,677 was $31,223 more than budgeted, and $35,000 and a little bit more than 2022. So what went in here? First of all, it's our dry fire suppressant system. And we've had many repairs to patch and replace pipe sections, and they rust out and it gets holes in them and it doesn't hold the pressure. So looking at it during the year, we got a proposal and we replaced that. Instead of an oxygen pressured system, it's a nitrogen pressured system. So nitrogen is set to not have the rust problems that an oxygen system does. And if we add the repairs, well, the repairs work for the year was about $14,000. The system itself was about $19,000. And that's all sitting in the repairs and maintenance expense for the year. So it's a big expense, yes, and that's what is sitting in there. Part of that too was with discussion with the council, and it was a decision to keep this expense in the general fund for the year as opposed to using the reserve dedicated account. And actually when they were talking about that and the decision was made, they put another $4,000 into the reserve dedicated account out of the 2023 general fund, and that's sitting in that repairs and maintenance expense category also, which at the end of the year, our reserve, kind of our building reserve fund in the dedicated has $50,000, 347 sitting in it. And this is very important as the building is aging and getting older. So this fund is set up to be a reserve sitting there, so if we do need major repairs, we have some set aside in order to take care of that. Another item, if you're looking at it, that has an increase to it is insurance. The building and property insurance, we were kind of forced to find a new carrier on that this fall. And there is an increase in cost here in the fourth quarter of 2023. And when we look at 2024's budget, you'll see an increase in the cost of the building insurance. A few other general items I just want to point out. That account number 5500, Community Missions, has a expense of $4,225 in it. 4,000 of that is the funds from the Close the Gap that Pastor Kristen was talking about that we donated out into the community to other organizations. And there will be another $1,000 here in 2024, as at the end of the year we surpassed the $50,000 mark with that. And then utilities. Account number 5930. I just want to point this out because in 2022 and 2023 we were in a time period where utilities and gas prices were rising very quickly and you didn't really know what was going to happen. And I just kind of want to point out, it seems like things have settled down in that area, and actually I think gas prices have dropped a little bit. And this fall and for this year, it's helped out that our weather hasn't been 10 below for too many days in a row. So we've had a warm fall, a warm winter so far, which is also helping in the gas utility section. So that's the basic of the income statement. So my next slide here. This is the recent history of our income and loss going back for 6 years. And in 2020, we had that PPP loan forgiveness thing that come through, and let's throw that out the board because that's kind of just bonus, unexpected stuff. So throw that out. There's our pluses and minuses over the last 6 years. So you add it all up, it's a 39. It's just shy of $40,000. If you divide that out, that's about $6,650 average net income over the 6 years. So, guess what I'm saying? It's always not perfect. It's not a perfect balanced budget, but over a 6-year period, it kind of equals itself all back out. So, I would, that's very positive. Good result. That's a good feeling right there. You have some ups, you have some downs, but you bring it all together, and it's staying pretty consistent. Next slide. So the next, I'd like to go to the balance sheet. The balance sheet starts on page 27, and I just want to start out with the big number on there is our mortgage. Our mortgage balance at $928,105. So our regular monthly payment on this is like $10,655. That's at 4.99% interest. And then every month we do extra principal payments from the Strengthening Faith Fund, and those have averaged about $1,240 over the last 6 months of 2023. So if the extra payments can average $1,150 per month going forward, and with our regular monthly payments, there is a final payoff on that mortgage on December 1st, 2031. Now that's 8 years. And you may think 8 years is honestly not that much. So I find that, I like that. That's positive. We're getting there. I'm going to point out Paul Hauk here but I don't want to embarrass you at all, and you don't have to answer this, but Paul was the president when we signed that original mortgage, and I know that because I was his vice president on the council. And you don't have to answer me, Paul, but how does 8 years sound on that? Sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Okay, then let's talk about cash. As Pastor Kevin mentioned, our general fund cash balance is at $264,000. We have another. Oh, you got me. Thank you. We have another $136,000 in dedicated, so our total cash balance in the bank systems right now is $400,522. And as you can see on there, new this year, there's a line item for mission investment CDs. At the beginning of this council session, it was discussed, and there's put some effort into looking into taking some of that cash instead of leaving it in the checking account doing nothing to see if we can earn some interest on it. And we looked into and decided on the ELCA Mission Investment Fund. And so we started putting amounts into some CDs with them, and they're on average earning about 4.7% interest. So at the end of the year, we have 140 in CDs. We did another 35,000 end of December. It actually pulled on the January 3rd. So as of now, we have 175,000 invested in CDs, in which at the end of March, because the interest is paid quarterly, at the end of March should be a little over $2,000 of interest earnings being paid out on that. If you take that over the 4 quarters of the year, that's a little over $8,000 of earning some interest on some money instead of just sitting it in the checkbook. So the method behind this is we have set up CDs every 3 months because it was my vocal point in the meetings. I don't want to tie up $175,000 for a 12-month period, but I can tie up $60,000 and then $30,000 and then $50,000 more each quarter. And once you get it rolling, every 3 months you have funds coming back to you if you need them, and all of it's not tied up for the whole year. So I think there's an opportunity here at the end of March to do another one, and then you got them set up, and they can just keep rolling, and you can just keep earning interest on them. So that was a nice initiative that a couple people other than me put some time and effort into this year, and we got it set up and rolling. The interest earned on this, starting in December, the council made the decision that the interest earned, they wanted to put it into the capital reserve dedicated account. And we kind of already talked about that reserve fund. It's very important we keep that funded and keep growing that fund. Because as our building gets older here, there's going to be more repair and bigger repairs that need to be done to it. The payroll withholding, the 10,300 and some, we kind of talked about the 10,000 of that sitting there, so we could get the expense in the same year for that year-end large donation with a request to pay out some bonuses. And those were paid out in January. Then page 29 just shows the in and out activity of the dedicated funds. It should be of some interest. There's different funds that money comes in dedicated to them, and then things go out and as they're running their program. So just a nice snapshot of some of the activity. Then we'll just bring it back to the audit report. The audit report's there from the audit committee that came in and took a look and did some tests and and ran some receipts and deposit records to make sure things were right and getting into the right spot. So I just want to say, a big thank you to Chris and Dan and Brandon here. I will say to Brandon, if you show up during the audit, you'll probably get put to work. But no, thank you to those guys. They come in and do some tests and checks and balances, and it's a good job that they do. So with that is my presentation of the financial results for 2023. If anybody had any questions, we could go over them. If not, I think it goes back to Brandon.
Okay. All right, so thanks, Dennis. I do want to just pause for just a moment and just say thank you to Dennis for all his work as our treasurer. It's been the last 4 years, if I remember correctly. He's been just an outstanding asset for the council, for myself this past year as president, and so just want to pause and say thanks for Dennis as he hands over this role to someone new here in the future. But thank you, Dennis, for what you do. All right, so moving on in our agenda here, I want to just call everybody's attention in the reports to the ministry team reports that are there, pages 15 through 25. And the reports you'll find in there are the adult spiritual growth, mission outreach, women's ministry, altar guild, children's ministries, property, worship and music, memorial, endowment, stewardship, youth ministries, finance and audit, fellowship and service, technology, fishers of men, and human resources. I want to thank everyone who submitted those reports and for what you do as well in each of those ministries. It's vital to the community that we have here. So with that, we'll move on to new business, and I'll actually bring up Michelle Beauvais for that. And then one quick ask for the council members in attendance. We'll get to elections here in just a second. If you could meet in the back and just help pass those out, please.
Good afternoon. Hold it really close, Kevin says. Okay, good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michelle Beauvais, and I had the pleasure of serving on council for the past year. I also have had the pleasure of working with Bob Brownowell, and thank you, Bob, for all your guidance in updating our Constitution. So Bob has been doing this for the last several years and has agreed to guide me as I step in to help him with that. So thank you, Bob, for all your work on this year's Constitution updates, and I reserve the right to ask you questions for many years to come. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, it's up here, but it's very tiny. FLC's Constitution is made up of provisions handed down to us from both the ELCA as well as the St. Paul Area Synod. It's also made up of our own bylaws specific to our own congregation here. Every 3 years, the ELCA and the Synod do a review and make updates to the required language. So that happened over this past year. And again, thank you to Bob for pulling all of that together for us. The council did review those most recent updates and voted for them to be considered by the full congregation here today at the annual meeting. So we will vote to amend our Constitution today, and if approved, then we will ratify the updated Constitution a year from now in next year's meeting. So it's a little bit of a cyclical process. Just an FYI, that council is also planning to do a more in-depth review of our congregation's specific bylaws in the coming year, because we just want to ensure that they do actually reflect the way that we are actually living out our ministry in terms of the way we have our ministry teams organized and documented, the way we communicate. So we just want to make sure that the Constitution is updated and reflects how we are actually serving and living out those faith. All right, so that's how I do this. Okay, perfect. So we will be voting to incorporate some ELCA required updates into our Constitution. These updates are made up of very minor language changes to the required ELCA and Synod provisions of our Constitution, and they include a couple of things that I just tried to bullet point out here so you can see some examples. So updating the statement of purpose to include, quote, advocating dignity, justice, and equity for all, caring for the marginalized, embracing and welcoming racially and ethnically diverse populations, standing in solidarity with the poor and oppressed. So that language is being added or has been added by the ELCA and the Synod into those required provisions. They also went through and removed pronouns in several places, the pronouns he or she, and instead are referring to just a specific role or a specific title for that person whom they are describing. And then last but not least, removing the words physical and mental, and instead just referring to more generally disability or incapacity. So it used to say physical disability or mental incapacity, now just removing those two words, just in describing how key leadership roles would be filled if there were situations that needed to be handled. So again, the language updates are pretty minor, and we, as a council, reviewed them in greater detail. They are out there if anyone wants to take more time to review them, but we are recommending as a council that we would approve them in today's meeting. Are there questions? Okay, I know that's a super exciting topic.
Yep. All right, thank you, Michelle. So with that, can I get a motion for a call to vote for the ELCA and Synod provisions? Bob, can I get a second? Linda, thank you. All in favor of approving the Synod provisions, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. So now we'll go back to, or come back to elections here. So you'll see the positions that are out there throughout these slides. We have some council members, some officer positions, the endowment committee, finance committee, and also nominating. So you should all have ballots now at this point, correct? Got them? Good, great. I guess before we do that, are there any other nominations? Okay. So I think we'll take a minute. You guys just go ahead and fill out your paperwork, and we'll be around to pick it up. I'll add one more thing while you're going. Also on there, you'll also see a pink slip. That's also an opportunity for you to vote for the next ministry partner. So just mentioned earlier was that we surpassed the $50,000 mark. So we have one more partner to donate to. So you'll see in that pink slip 3 options for you to select from. Okay, so as those are being collected now then, I'm actually going to bring Dennis back up here to cover the 2024 proposed budget.
Wait. So the 2024 proposed budget starts on page 26, and then the 2-page extra insert handout of numbers here. And what we're looking at is the shaded column, which says the 2024 budget on it. And so we're looking at it, the budget has a bottom line negative of $21,160 as of right now. Not scary, but it means there is some intentional effort needed to be done throughout the year. And I guess if I want to reference last year's budget, it was good for about 2 days, and then things started to get changed already. So this is a guesswork of some of the things. We know we got some decisions to make on some staffing. So this is a best effort of what the numbers are looking like right now. So what's this budget based on? It's based on offerings at $893,000, which includes that $50,000 to close the gap, turning that into regular offerings. And I think that's kind of the message in that campaign, and it's been, the message and the intentional effort to go forward is that, that close the gap wasn't a one-year fix. It's turning that into regular offerings is the goal. And then other than that, the total receipts of $944,000 is honestly is $8,800 less than the total receipts in 2023. So that's kind of what the receipt side of it is based on. It's based on, I'm going to switch my slides here. Boom. And it's based on total expenses coming in at $965,784. Which, let me get my page right here. Which is an increase. Find my spot. Which is an increase of about $41,752 from the 2023 actual. I'm kind of losing my earpiece here. So then we just let's talk about the big one, payroll and benefits. Payroll and benefits at the budgeted $598,624. That is just shy of 62% of the total budget. So 62% of the whole thing is in payroll and benefits. That number includes a 2% increase in pay for paid staff. It includes moving Pastor Kristen and Pastor Ben from a 1.0 full-time equivalent for the year to a 1.1 full-time equivalent base for the year. It includes hiring a youth support position for the second half of the year. What that exactly looks like, I don't think anybody really knows right now, but we know we need some staff support into that position, so we put together an idea of what that could look like, and honestly, it's kind of a placeholder. We need to have something in the budget for it. And that's approximately about $25,000 in the budget right now for that position for half a year. The budget also includes Pastor Ben at additional 0.5 full-time equivalent for January through May. And this is part of, the confirmation program that is being ran without a youth director behind it. So Pastor Ben has extra time put in. It's the same 0.5 full-time equivalent that we added in the fall when the confirmation program started. So that's really the detail in what's the increases and the differences in the payroll and benefits that we're looking at for 2024. The other ones I kind of already mentioned, property insurance, kind of towards the end of the last page, the 5940 section. Building insurance, just the way it is and what's happening, that is a kind of a significant increase from previous years. I say, in the same section, the mortgage payment at $127,860 a year. If we add the mortgage and the payroll together, that's 75% of the budget right there. And then, let's see, building repairs and maintenance. By doing the fire suppressant system in 2023, we should not have that much in repairs for that system in the new year. But then the question always is what's next? So I guess that's to answer that question is why I've talked about it a couple times and mentioned it again. That's why we keep building up that reserve fund, because we know there's things out there with the building that's going to have to be taken care of. Inside building repairs and maintenance is that mechanical equipment maintenance contract. For 2024, we're still paying $500 a month of that out of the reserve account. So what you're seeing in the general fund expense for the year is just what the general fund is going to pay, but keep in mind that contract, there's another $6,000 that gets paid out of the reserve account to help with that maintenance contract. So that's kind of the big items on the budget for 2024. I guess when I look at it, I just, a little reminder to go back to the slide when we looked at the 6-year history of income and loss, and how it ups and downs, and averages out to $6,000 in some over a 6-year period of annual income. And then I always have to remind myself of this, and I look back on it, but the mission of our church, the mission of this congregation, is not to see how profitable we can make it. What's our mission? Our mission is to provide a meaningful worship experience, fostering connections, serving and caring for others, nurturing and developing faith journeys with and for all ages. There's nothing in that mission statement that says we need to get as much profit as we can. So evening out the ups and downs and close to break even over a 6-year period is exactly what our mission is here, to turn that into providing worship experiences. So that is my presentation for the 2024 budget. If there's any questions, we can run through them. The basis for the increase was we were dropped by the current insurance provider we had, and we have an insurance broker we work for who goes out and contacts others and gets quotes, and what we have going forward, which started in the fourth quarter of 2023, is the policy that we have. I know through council the discussions in this, and I want to put words out of Pastor Kevin's mouth, but Pastor Kevin did have this information that, and had, some other churches about how they, and it's kind of a common theme in the church area that your insurance policies are getting. I like the one you said, you called them up one week. Insurance industry. I'll turn that.
Sure. I think I heard you say, do we know what the statements of intent are for 2024, and how does it compare with giving in 2023? Right, that's a good question. It's one we're still asking. It's that good of a question. And there is a kind of an addendum piece, a white piece of paper that it's a report on that. Part of what we know is, we see how many statements of intent have come in that dollar amount. We're still trying to understand the match, because one part of it is saying you'll have a year where it's like 50 of the folks who did a statement of intent this year didn't do one last year. And in our system, trying to match up, it's hard to match up apples to apples. We're also seeing a trend where more folks will adjust their own giving, but not submit a statement of intent. And trying to understand that so we can treat that like a statement of intent and say, hey, family A went in and changed their giving this way. And so we're working with Elvanto, who does that, because then when we run our reports, we can't simply get that. So there's some of the old-fashioned just going through, what did this household do from year to year? So I'm not giving you a good answer because I don't have a good answer on that, but that's what we're trying to figure out, is what is that, right? What's that delta? What can we anticipate and expect for that? So we'll keep looking at that too, Ron, because that's what I'm trying to understand. Chris Lynch just ran some more numbers for me on Friday, and that's part of what's shared in that report that's on the table.
Okay, I think with that, I'll ask for a motion to approve our 2024 budget. Ron, thank you. And a second? Laura, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you. So I think we'll keep us moving here and go to our Light of Christ Awards.
All right. Ben and Kristen, you can sure join me on this. The whole Light of Christ Awards, it's trying to focus on the celebration of how God works through you. And the reality is we could probably give certificates all over the place. Something we did to try to kind of lessen the volume a little bit is we don't have repeat folks on this today, on this one. But as I say, there's story after story we could share. But the whole thought is kind of, it's what some of those who work behind the scenes on that. And I know we got some of our recipients who are out of town today. I'm going to say if there's ones you want to lift up and share. The first one I'm going to share is Chris Patchy, and I believe Chris Patchy, her and her family are out of town. Chris is one who, along with Liz, brought our senior high youth out to the Black Hills last summer. She's one who's been a part of our youth team. She's been a confirmation mentor, I'm not even sure for how many years now with that. She's also, again, part of that strategy saying, hey, how are we called to do ministry, youth ministry? What's the most effective? In the midst of all those things, Chris's mom passed away unexpectedly not too many weeks ago, back in November. And Chris is also in the midst of all that. She's here on Sunday mornings to hang out with our youth. And I just share that, like, what an awesome way. So Chris Patchy is one of our winners. We'll kind of keep rolling through these. Another one, Jillian Lewis and her husband Chris and Callum are home with some illness this morning. You'll see Callum up at our children's sermons always. And Jillian has jumped in. She's one of our small group leaders for confirmation. Willingness to jump in with other things with our youth ministry. I don't know if there are other pieces we want to be adding, but very in special music. She's been up there singing with praise band and other things as well. And so as I share that, we always have like folks who've been around doing things for a long time. You'll notice a number of these, like Jillian Lewis, they were just new members a few months ago, I want to say. And so you see that sometimes in churches like, well, it's the same people doing the same things. And we do have a lot of long-term outstanding folks, but also go, hey, who are they? Oh, they're pretty new. Boy, they're jumping in and doing different things. So Jillian Lewis is another one of our Light of Christ Award winners. Another one that I wanted to share here is Joe McKean. And Joe and Madden came to Farmington Lutheran, 2.5, 3 years ago, and jumped right in with confirmation ministry. Joe has been a small group leader for us. As you know, Joe's son, Madden, died last Memorial Day weekend. This weekend, him and Madden had a trip planned with Joe's parents to go down to Florida. And so they decided to still live out that trip together, remembering Madden as they go. Joe is one who says, he goes, I've learned a lot in what's really most important in life. And you'll see him here at worship 8:30. He's still leading our kids in small groups. He's coaching kids in the community. And it's pretty cool. The kids are drawn to him. And what an awesome model that he is for us. And he's somebody who's knowing this, who's getting this award. He says, I got to tell you, church community and me having these different things, he's like, that's my purpose. And so what an awesome thing as he serves, but he also sees it as such a gift for him. So
I have Jackie Edwards, who was here. Did she need to duck out early? You're not here anymore, are you, Jackie? Jackie's done a little bit of everything for us. She's one of our main caregiving volunteers, so she regularly visits some of our folks who are in memory care units and senior living facilities. And she jumps in at the last minute to make hospital runs when one of us can't get there. So she's just been tremendous with that. And she also comes in regularly and just says, what do you need? Which is a dangerous thing to ask a church staff. Is wonderful. So she has stuffed bags and some of the little handouts we give to the kids at like Christmas Eve. And she's taken care of a lot of that. She put together 200 some birthday hats for our birthday party for Jesus. So she's done a lot, and we are grateful. And Karina and Lily Nelson, I think, are also not here today. Karina's dad just recently passed away, but they've done a lot for our music program. Karina helps with some of the FLC time music, and her daughter Lily has helped her with that too. And Karina's done some stuff with our leading worship and special music during worship too. So we're thankful they're sharing their gifts with us.
I have three. A couple of them are Sam and Jared Rendell. So I'm going to make you walk all the way up here and get yours for Sam. So Jared is becoming increasingly involved in a variety of ways, but you are also on youth team for us, and you have jumped into some tech and some sound things, and Sam is eager to hop into those as well. Hi, Sam. What's up? I can tell. You did a lot of this at a previous site and congregation. You're also involved in camp ministries all over the place and have some tech and web stuff you do for them. I always love watching you when you're in praise band and when Sam's on the slides, because I can see you willing him to change the slide when it's time to do that. So you lean into it, and Sam, you nail it. It's all good. So thank you to you. I can give a hand for Jared because he's here for all that work. Thank you to both of you. Thank you, Sam. Thanks a lot. You'll hear your name again later, I think, right? This one's for the Cheddar family. So you can tell the boys that they missed getting an award today. But this is for Andrea and Steve in lots of ways. So they were both involved in the youth team, and I sent an email out asking for help with that. They hopped on board. Steve is a small group leader. Andrea was, but is a sub regularly for small group leaders in confirmation. They also have a 6th grader in pre-con, and so Andrea has lifted the whole weight of doing our suppers on the 2nd. We didn't have enough volunteers this last time around, and so Andrea said, Steve and I'll just cover it, so we got it taken care of. So thank you very much for that. Steve also led, as far as I know, the first large-scale organized game of hide and seek in Farmington Lutheran. We did our Christmas party for confirmation, and I said, Steve is generally a small group. I said, Steve's group's doing hide and seek, and there were so many kids piled together doing hide and seek, ones that weren't even in confirmation. They were just here with their families. So they showed up, and we never found a couple of them. So, if you hear knocking on cabinets, just take a peek, make sure you don't have any kids in there. But thank you to the Cheddar family for all the things that you do. Thank you very much.
All right, this Light of Christ word goes to Rick and Vicki Stevens. And Rick and Vicki are ones who, when you first arrived here, you talked about, boy, I love that gift of music, right? And experienced that in music, got connected with Carissa, and the folks going, hey, who's that new guy singing in the choir? And then that new guy, hey, who's that guy singing these solos? Wow, who's got that powerful voice? Not just in those ways, but different things. I think of, your empty nesters, and we had things going on with youth. You're saying, we want to support youth. That's what makes a strong church. And a number of stories, but one of those was that Tuesday night after Madden died, we said, boy, we're going to invite, the students to come here, and we should be ready. Like Rick and Vicki are some of those folks saying, hey, we'll be there, and we can help with food, and we can help with the students and all these different things. So looking at that of, you come here interested in music, and all these things happen, and your willingness to jump in and serve in all these different areas. You'll be serving on church council now this next year as well. Vicki, we've already been hitting you up on finance-related questions and things like that. For all those gifts, we want to give this award to you. So thank you very much. Thank you guys very, very much. So, all right, thank you, Vicki.
And I get to share that we get to give the next $1,000 to The Drawer. That's our winning organization. So if you don't know a lot about them, they're a local nonprofit that works on getting clean socks and underwear to folks who need them. So I get to tell my kids we're talking about undies in church. They're going to be jazzed about that. We've done Undie Sundays in the past, so that may be coming again. But that organization also really believes in the power of relationships and partnering with other organizations in the community to not just provide for people's needs with underwear and socks, but also uplifting communities of folks who are often forgotten about. So give yourselves a round of applause for giving away another $1,000.
Okay, so getting closer to the end of this, so I want to thank you all for being here. We'll start with our election results. So just, we did reach our quorum. We have 73 here in person that signed in and 10 on the live stream. So just so, that's part of the record here. But as we go through election results, just want to share Rick Stevens, Karen Hulscher, and Jared Rendell have all been voted as new council members, so congratulations. Our officers, next president here, Linda Landwehr and Michelle, who came up here earlier to talk about the Constitution, are both approved as well as president and vice president.
Awesome.
Our endowment committee, we have both Nancy Gustafson and Chris Dorman that have been approved for those roles. And our finance committee is going to have some shoes to fill here as Dennis is moving on, but we have the three there were approved as well. So Bob Brownowell, Chris Lewis, and Joe McKean. And then nominating committee, two candidates were approved there, each for a 2-year term. That's Whitney Quast and Tim Grundler. And then our budget is officially approved. So with that, I actually want to bring up Linda Landwehr and pass the torch. While she's coming up, I do just want to say thank you. It's been a really tremendous honor to be able to support you and serve you in this role over the last year. It's in my report. I think just our family is so gracious and humbled by this community. And there's, while we talked about maybe a 10 Light of Christ awards, there's so many faces in this room, and for those that aren't here, that we could continue to gush about for all the wonderful acts of generosity of your time, money, and other things. So thank you for that. And Linda, come on up.
Is this working? Okay. So my dad was an auctioneer. I really don't need this, but I'll use it anyway. Thank you, Brandon. Brandon has been a really phenomenal leader of the council, and we're really fortunate that he was here this year doing that job. So we should give a round of applause to Brandon.
Thank you.
As he said, my name is Linda Landwehr. My husband, Paul, who is sitting in the back there. Paul and I have been members of this congregation since 1990. We have 2 adult sons who were both baptized and confirmed here. And I can't believe that the years have flown by. I remember being a new mom, getting my new baby baptized in 1991. And I just can't believe how many years it's been. But it is a privilege to be a member of this conversation and in service to Christ with you guys, and I feel really blessed to be here. And you guys are phenomenal. Thank you so much for all of your support this past year with your gifts of time and talents and money. It's really what drives everything we do. We do have some other council members here today. Actually, would those of you on the council just stand up so you can be recognized? We've got Whitney and Liz in the back, and Julie and Matt, and Michelle, and Jeff was here. They are really phenomenal, gifted people, and we're very fortunate to have them. It's also true that we've got 4 council members who will be done with their terms this year, so I'd like to offer a round of applause to Brandon and Dennis and Liz and Julie. The 4 of them are done. So thanks, you guys. It's been a privilege to serve with you, and I'm really excited about what's next for you guys. I also need to make sure that we thank all of those who were here helping to set up, get the PowerPoint and the tables and chairs and the technology and all of that ready, and the food, yes, the food. Connie, and who kind of leads that group. I saw Beth Gulsvig, Marlis, and who else was back there? Pat was back there. So thanks, ladies, for doing that. It was delicious. I think that's all I have to do, right? Okay. So, well, that was easy.
Oh, great job.
All
Thank you,
right.
Linda. So, all right. Well, thank you all for that privilege of being in the ministry together. You have one more thing? Oh, yeah. We're gonna pull you back up here if we can. So, sure. But in the moment here, we're gonna do think of us where we move on together, right? We know that God is with us, and so maybe you can't. For us to say thank you for all of you, all that you do. We're gonna have a prayer, and this one actually comes from the ELW evening prayer. So if you can see it, you can sure join in. But I like it as we never fully know whether it's a budget, as Dennis has pointed out. Things change pretty quickly in things, so we trust in God to lead the way. So let's go ahead and pray. O God, you have called your servants to ventures of which we cannot see the ending, by paths as yet untrodden, through perils unknown. Give us faith to go out with good courage, not knowing fully where we go, but only that your hand is leading us and your love supporting us. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Okay, and can I have a motion to adjourn, please? Paul? And Phyllis, do you want to be second? Okay, thank you. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Anybody opposed to leaving? Okay, awesome.
All right, thank you all.
Are we going to pray? Say the Lord's Prayer? No.